if you had to award a prize for the least offensive country in the world, I dare say Canada would certainly make the shortlist, unless you are a Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia. The most extraordinary diplomatic spat has erupted between Saudi Arabia and Canada. It started on Twitter and has spun into something much bigger. This is the tweet that ignited the row from the very PC, Canadian Foreign Ministry feed. It expresses grave concern about the arrests of civil rights and women's movement activists and urges their immediate release. Saudi took a couple of days and came back with a full Trumpian stream of anger. Overt and blatant interference in the internal affairs of the kingdom, they called it. A grave and unacceptable violation of the kingdom's laws and procedures. The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, through its history, has not and will not accept any form of interfering in its internal affairs. And we'll move them on. Then, this bizarre one, any other attempt to interfere in our affairs means we're allowed to interfere in Canada's internal affairs. And then it became altogether darker with one unofficial Saudi site, Infographic KSA, posting a picture of a plane flying into the Toronto skyline with the threatening words, "He who interferes with what doesn't concern him finds what doesn't please him." That was taken down and the account has been closed. Well, meanwhile, Saudi Arabia has cancelled direct flights to Toronto, expelled the Canadian ambassador, called its students and hospital patients in Canada to move elsewhere, and today overseas asset managers were told to offload their Canadian assets. So the Saudis clearly didn't like it. Justin Trudeau tried to be reconciliatory this evening, but he didn't apologise for the original remarks. Well, I'm joined by Neil Quilliam, a senior research fellow for Chatham House in London, and from Ottawa in Canada is Alex Neve, the Secretary General of Amnesty International Canada. I wonder if I can start with you, Alex, on just why the Saudis would come down on this, not that bad a tweet, so hard.
Clearly the Saudis are expressing very serious frustration. This is a series of frustrations they felt with the Swedes, with the Germans, and they feel that despite the reforms that have been taking place, they're still bashed by the international community. Now, I think this is more symptomatic of some deeper changes taking place in the kingdom. And you used the word Trumpian just now. I think a sort of a Trumpianization, if you like, of the way in which Saudi Arabia is operating and working. I would say there are 4 factors that underlie this action. 2 of those are international, 2 are domestic. One is they're now living in a period where they feel that they no longer need the green light from the US to take action. They're no longer that slow-moving, conservative, consensual state. They can simply act and then let the world catch up. So that's number one. Yeah. And that's a consequence of Trump coming into power, but also the Saudis very much sort of listening to those lessons that Obama taught them, calling them free riders, that now they want to sort of step forward. Yeah. They want to present themselves as this active player, not just in the region, on the world stage. And domestically, there are 2 factors at play too.
Very quickly, yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. One is that Mohammed bin Salman, the Crown Prince, is very much trying to build and construct a new sense of Saudi identity and nationalism. This plays into that back at home. Right. This says to the youth, we can stand up for ourselves. We're not going to be pushed around. But at the same time, it also sends a very strong signal and message to those reformers that want to push the reform agenda. No, we will not tolerate your dissent.
OK. Let me turn to you, if I could, Alex, Neve. Canada must have been taken by surprise of what it's seen, right?
Oh, absolutely. This first broke on Sunday night here in Ottawa. Would have been very late in Riyadh. And it took everyone by surprise that there had been a reaction at all. It was perhaps not a total surprise, but the ferocity of the reaction and the fact that here we are 72 hours later, and it keeps on giving. It almost feels like every 4 or 5 hours there's announcement of a new set of sanctions. And I think that that makes it clear to everyone that, yes, this is certainly about Canada, taking umbrage with what was a very reasonable and we would say laudable intervention by our foreign minister. But this is clearly also far beyond Canada. This is a muscular attempt to send a message to the international community more widely.
So, yeah, other countries are going to think very carefully before they put a tweet of that kind out. But do you think the rest of us should be backing Canada up? We are Canada. Je suis Nous sommes Canada, and kind of saying, look, we believe what Canada said as well. If you give it to them, give it to us, and you can remove your students and hospital patients from the entire North America and Europe, which would obviously hurt quite a lot of Saudis.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Certainly from Canada, that is the message that we are conveying to the international community. I know the Canadian government is conveying that message behind closed doors through diplomatic channels, but we're certainly doing so more widely. I mean, obviously, this is a very difficult time for the Canada-Saudi relationship, but I think we should also view this as, you know, the sensitivity and the fierceness of the Saudi reaction here should be taken as an opportunity. This is not a time to retreat. This is a time for countries to find common cause, which they've always been reluctant to do. But this is the moment to forge that common front in raising these concerns.
Well, I'll tell you why. One reason why we might not is that we do a lot more trade with Saudi Arabia than Canada does, so it would potentially hurt us more than even that you're being hurt. But would there be much support in Canada if Justin Trudeau just apologised or said, oh, well, it was a bit impetuous of us, or we shouldn't have done it? Would he lose credibility if he did that and the whole thing was closed?
I think he would now, especially given that in the last couple of days we have heard yesterday from our Foreign Minister, Chrystia Freeland, and then today from the Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, not backing away from that position, not being belligerent or anything of that sort, but certainly not retreating. And I think for the most part, Canadians are proud of that position. We recognize how severe the human rights situation is in Saudi Arabia, and I think there's a certain pride in having taken this stand. Obviously, there's concern if it starts to have too much economic impact, but I think backing away would be seen as a retreat.
Yeah. Neil, what would they have to do, if you like, to repair the damage done by this tweet last week? I mean, does an apology do it? Abject apology? I mean,
who knows? I mean, it would have to be an abject apology. It would have to be an out and right sort of, retraction of that statement and a promise to never do it again, which clearly is not going to happen.
And you wouldn't mean it if you did it, so it's...
Absolutely, but I also think this is also part of a sequence of sort of foreign policy adventures, shall we say, or adventurism that the Saudi Crown Prince has sort of embarked upon. But at each point, there hasn't been a sort of exit strategy at the end of it. So I'm not quite sure, what the Saudis are thinking, what would satisfy them, and what would, enable them to sort of roll back.
Would you support sort of Western solidarity? It's like we're fed up with this. They did it with us on the death of a princess thing decades ago, didn't they?
I mean,
Just like we'll say what we want to say. That's our way of doing things.
Absolutely, I would do that. But the messages from most Western governments will be passed sort of diplomatically, very privately, and spoken at very senior levels, and that's where they'll be really pushing. They won't want to make this too public, because then that just blows up again.
Neil, Alex, thanks both very much indeed.